Welcome back. And just before we, set the tone for that particular conversation, which we have done already, by the way, but just before we get right into it, let's focus on international politics, particularly the Israel-Gaza war. An event which has been concerning for the international community since October the 7th, 2023, when this began. And joining us for this conversation is the Israel Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ms. Sharon Haskell, who joins us virtually from the Federal Capital Territory. Good morning, Ms. Haskell, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for inviting me this morning.
Let's start with, your country's plans for Gaza, which is another talking point amid the Israel-Gaza conflict. The Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has spoken about how Israel will take control of Gaza and hand over to Arab forces. But the international community is seeking clarity on what exactly the plans are if the Palestinian Authority will not be allowed to, take control following the, eventual, hopefully, resolution of this conflict. So what exactly is the plan?
Well, look, I think it's very simple. On the 7th of October, Hamas declared war with the worst massacre of Jews since the Holocaust. This terrorist organization has raped little girls, burned people alive, executed and abducted more than 250 hostages, that 50 of them still remain captive in their hands, being tortured, abused, raped, physically, emotionally. And we've said there is one way this conflict can end: when the Hamas return all of our hostages back home and when it's disarmed. Israel cannot live next to this terrorist organization who's a death cult, who is threatening to continue and commit those crimes against our people over and over again. During the last few weeks, we've been negotiating to try and find a ceasefire. We've been negotiating in good faith and actually going quite a few steps towards Hamas's demands. We've already approved the ceasefire draft that was drafted by the United States and by the envoy Witkoff. Unfortunately, Hamas time after time refused that proposal for a ceasefire, refused that proposal for the negotiation, and was not negotiating in good faith. Those talks fell apart just last week. And when we saw the images of two of our hostages, Rom and Evyatar, being starved to death by this terrorist organization, we understand they don't have a lot of time. So our government decided to take the only option that is left, and it is to continue a full military campaign to liberate Gaza from Hamas and to bring back our hostages. I hope this military campaign will start in the next couple of weeks, because our hostages don't have a lot of time left. Seeing those images, understanding their conditions. And so we will go in with our army, we will liberate the hostages, and hopefully we will be able to disarm Hamas as quickly as possible. This is what the Prime Minister meant. The day after Hamas is going to be an issue for the international community, as it's being discussed for the last 2 years, in the hope that Arab neighboring country or a responsible, even Palestinian entity might be able to try and sort and lead from a civilian perspective together with those Arab countries, somewhat of the civilian lives of the Palestinian. We understand it's going to take time, and the security aspect will need to be remained in Israeli hands to make sure that no other terrorist organization, not Hamas and not ISIS, not other ones, will rise up in order to threat our community and our people.
All right, Minister, it's understandable to be worried about living around hostilities like Hamas. It's condemnable what Hamas did on October the 7th, but it's also condemnable some of the action that Israel has taken? Because if you're talking about killings, how would you describe the position of Israel in terms of the costs in this sense? We understand about 60,000 or plus persons are being killed, a lot of them children. So it feels like Israel is as guilty in terms of this killing as well, just like Hamas did. When people push that to you, how do you respond? How do you justify your action?
Well, the first thing, I think that if anything, the Nigerian people truly would understand Israel's position. Because if Israel does not fight Hamas, the terrorist organization, and does not dismantle it, we will face a similar situation like in Nigeria, where that is committed sometimes on a daily basis by Hamas. And so our government has said this is absolutely unacceptable and we will dismantle this terrorist organization. Now, they are using horrible tactics, including using people, Palestinians, as human shields, hiding themselves and their military bases underneath hospitals, hiding their rocket launchers and armed warehouses in schools, because they know that Israel does not target those facilities, so they decide to hide there. What Israel is doing in order to make sure that no civilians will be harmed is, actions that no other army in the world has taken. We send text messages, we drop leaflets, we make phone calls to civilians in areas before the IDF, our army, is going in to make sure that they evacuate and that the only ones left are Hamas. Does Hamas get those warnings as well and sometimes make our work a lot harder? Yes. But in order to try and avoid civilian casualties, we do that. In the beginning of the war, when we sent an evacuation notice in the front of Gaza Strip, all around the north, we told civilians to evacuate and to go to the south as the IDF will come into the campaign in the north. They started evacuating, but Hamas snipers were shooting at them, killing them, threatening them to stay in the north, not to flee to the south where they will be safe, because they wanted to use them as human shields. The Israeli army had to eliminate Hamas's snipers in order to facilitate a safe route for Palestinians to flee to the south. Now, those kind of actions are actions that are not being taken by any other army. And if you look on the results in numbers in regards to civilian casualties towards a combatant, this is a 1-to-1 ratio. Now, don't get me wrong, every loss of life is a tragedy, but those numbers are not very much being achieved in any other urban warfare in our modern history. And so because those actions, there are less and less civilian casualties.
Ms. Haskell, let's manage our time and expand the scope of this conversation, even though, the Arab Authority in Palestine would, challenge your position on some of these issues. But another issue that is concerning for the international community is the targeting and killing of Al Jazeera journalist Anas al-Sharif and 5 others. And besides that, there's also a tally of the number of journalists that have been killed amid this war. What is Israel's explanation for this and for, according to reports, more than 500 others who have been killed amid this war, and the concern also about the refusal to allow journalists really capture the situation in the Gaza Strip?
So first of all, I want you to pay very good attentions to those images of the funeral that you're bringing up, to actually dismantle the lie of starvation in Gaza. Those images comes from recent days. And, as a continent that unfortunately know how famine or starvation truly looks like, you can see that those people are very well fed and are not on a starving situation. This is the first thing, and these are very recent images. Now, in regards to the journalist, if you go to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs website, you will see that those journalists, this particular journalist, is not a real journalist. He is a tool in the hands of Hamas. Many images of this journalist together with the leadership of Hamas are there. They are being used as a propaganda tool as part of the war. This war against a terrorist organization is not just being fought in the army front through military, but also through media. And when you say that my numbers are being disputed by the Palestinians, the information that you're getting are from the mouthpiece of Hamas. This is Hamas Ministry of Health, who is spreading a lot of lies and a lot of propaganda because they understand this war is also being fronted in the general media, on social media, and that's why they're spreading those images. But the fact is that this particular journalist was in the service of Hamas. There are images of him with the leadership. Many of those journalists have taken part in the 7th of October massacre. I have images of them on the 7th of October on Israeli tanks in homes of people who were abducted into Gaza. And so you need to understand that they are being served as a tool as well. And you asked me about why journalists cannot enter Gaza right now. And I think it's very important to understand the Gaza Strip is a very, very small area. The width of the Gaza Strip is between 6 and 12 kilometers. It's tiny. This area is a front line, and we are trying to shield civilians from harm's way. We cannot take responsibility for journalists who are in the front line. Even in Ukraine, where you can report quite safely from Kiev, who is hundreds of kilometers away from the actual front line, the active war. You can report safely, but the Ukrainian army is closing down the areas where there's an active war. And unfortunately, in Gaza, there is an active war. And I just want to remind you last thing. When Hamas has abducted 250 people, they also abducted foreigners, including a Tanzanian civilian, including Thai workers, including Filipinos. We have to pay the price to release them, whether it's through an armed conflict and whether it is through the release of terrorists, of murderers from our prisons. So if any of these journalists will be abducted, unfortunately, it will be on the responsibility of Israel to release them as well. And this is a responsibility we cannot take right now.
There seems to be a very slim line between propriety and necessity when it comes to issues bedeviling the Israeli and Gaza war. It's an ongoing conversation. We wish we would have you back, but we're totally out of time at this point. We must thank you very much for coming to put some clarity to these issues. We've been talking with the Israeli Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ms. Sharon Haskell, who has joined us on this one from Abuja. Thank you for coming through on this conversation.
Thank you.
We'll take a break now. When we return, we'll get even more clarity from the aviation authorities on the events between Ms. Comfort Emanson and IBOM Air staff, and of course all other related issues. So stay with us, we'll be right back.